Welcome to the episode. Today, we are diving into a topic that many high achievers face but rarely talk about openly, that is burnout. Our guest today is Minh-Thu Lam, who specializes in helping executives and professionals not only recover from burnout, but also rediscover balance, purpose, and fulfillment in both life and work. So get ready for an honest and insightful conversation about what it really takes to thrive without burning out. Min, thank you for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm great, Harjit. Thank you for having me. Thank you for reaching out. I love to talk all things burnout and stress, so I'm excited for this.
Love it. So let's jump right in. I came across your story on LinkedIn where you shared that you were young, already in a managerial role in the luxury retail world, and by all accounts, as they say, living the dream, earning top dollars. And yet you found yourself waking up with the question, is this all there is to life? If you feel comfortable, could you share more about your phase of life and how did you recognize when you were experiencing as burnout?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I was raised obviously in like an Asian immigrant household where I think the notion is hard work, hard work, hard work, right? Understandably so. So I've always been raised on that, and I was a competitive dancer all my life. You know what I mean? Good grades in school. So this aspect of just work hard and get the good result has always been ingrained in me. So of course, when I transitioned to like my first major career, I worked for one of the top luxury brands in the world for about 9 years. And I had a really great life, right? Like looking from the outside in, like you mentioned, like I had a really good high paying job. I had good quote unquote security in my job. I had a brand new car every year. I had great family and friends, I could travel whenever I wanted as like, financially. Um, and it had gotten to a point where, like you said, I was waking up and I was saying, I've done everything everyone told me to. Why don't I feel happy? Right. And then this other side of that is then when you start to ask yourself that question, then you also start to judge yourself for the fact that you've been saying that. Cause like everyone would love to be in your position. How many people would kill to have your job, and you're sitting here saying you're not happy, like you're ungrateful, like you know what I mean? It's very toxic cycle that you kind of put yourself through, right? But like it wasn't that I was walking around acting like I wasn't grateful for what I had. It's just the reality was I felt empty, and it showed up in a few different ways. Physically, my sleep was terrible. I would, probably 3 to 4 nights out of the week, I would wake up about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I would lay there for 2 or 3 hours, fall back asleep for an hour or two, and then have to get up and go work. So my sleep was terrible. I used to throw up actually about once a week from stress. And I didn't realize it was from stress. I thought it was like a dietary issue. I was allergic to something or whatever. So I'd try every diet. I tried eliminating dairy. I tried eliminating meat, and nothing helped. It wasn't actually until I healed my burnout did the vomiting stop. Um, I was irritable. I was highly snappy. I would constantly overthink. My body was always tense, like my back and my neck and my shoulders. Like just my body was in a constant state of restriction. Okay. So that's how it showed up physically. And then like from a mental and emotional side is like I just didn't have any patience. Like I had enough patience to get the job done. I had enough patience to be a good human being. Like I was still a nice person, but like when it came to hanging out with my friends, I would often cancel on plans a lot because I was just too exhausted. When it came to like talking to someone like my mom on the phone, I would have really little patience with her, and not because she was doing anything wrong, but because I knew my mom would be able to see through the mask I had on, and she would be able to say like something's wrong, and I didn't really want to expose that to her. I didn't have the capacity to emotionally connect with people or be
Mhm.
present in the moment. So when I'm at work, I'm daydreaming about going on vacation because I don't want to be here. And then when I'm out with my friends or with my family, I'm worrying about work. And so it's like, no matter what I was doing, I never felt like I could be present in the moment and just be here with whoever I was with whatever I was doing, and that carried on for so long, where again, eventually I woke up one day and I was like, I shouldn't want to escape my life this badly. Like I was literally living for vacation. Get me on vacation, get me on vacation. You know what I mean? And it's like one day I was like, that's not healthy. Like if I constantly want to escape my life, something else is going on here. And again, I didn't think it was burnout. And that's like one of the main things I see with my clients, especially people who are high performers, like executives, business owners, anything like that. I always say their biggest blind spots are two things. A, they don't actually know what burnout is. And B, they're in denial as to whether they have it or not. Because a lot of people think burnout is like, you have no energy, you're stuck on the couch, like you can't get anything done. All of my clients are in high functioning burnout. That's what I call it, which means they're still productive, they're still getting things done, they're still making things happen, but their body and their mind are paying for it on the back end. And that usually shows up in the way I described it showed up in myself. So I wasn't stuck on the couch. I was still making good money, pushing business along, all of that. But I was suffering on the back end very much so. And then that's when I realized I was burnt out.
Interesting. So all this while, did you still love what you did?
That's a good question. I don't know if I ever loved what I did. I definitely I really enjoyed the aspect of competition because it was, it's commission, or like you're generating sales for a company. I've always prided myself on loving competition. I've always prided myself on winning and accomplishing things and problem solving. So I loved that aspect of the business, and I worked for a pretty really incredible brand. So I was really blessed. But if I'm being honest with you, if I wouldn't have been compensated the way I was, I don't think I would have stayed as long, right? The income, I always say I had golden handcuffs. I definitely did. I worked with great people, a great brand. I'm still friends with people that work there today. I still am a client of that brand. But did I love the job? No, but was there enough good things about there to stay there for that long? Yes.
Interesting. So what steps did you actually take that moved through it?
That's a good question. Um, First off, it took me a few years, if I'm being honest, to really get myself out of burnout because, again, I didn't even really understand what I was going through. Um, but I've tried everything. I've tried everything from sound healing and energy healing all the way to super scientific stuff. I've kind of tried everything in between, right? And, now knowing what I know and going through what I've been through, all those things are just opportunities to come back to yourself and to reconnect with yourself. And most people think burnout is it happens because you have too much on your plate. That can add to it, but the root cause of burnout is disconnect. So typically people only get to burnout because they've been disconnected from their needs for so long. Okay. So maybe I'll start with how that happens, and then it kind of leads you into how you fix it. So that looks like working through your lunch break when you know you're hungry and you need some nutrients, but you're going to work instead. That looks like working until 10 p.m. at night when you know you're tired, but your body and you need rest, but you're going to work instead. That looks like working on the weekends when you know you actually need some connection and some love with your friends, but you ignore that. That looks like telling yourself you're fine when you're not, and pretending that you're okay when really you're on the verge of tears. Like these sound like little things, but when you compound that day after day after day after day, what that does is it slowly creates this wedge between who you really are and who you're showing up as. Okay. And so then when you have this big gap, anyone's looking at this on a physical clip, there's a space between two hands. Now, when you have this gap, that gap is what creates room for anxiety to come in, and being a control freak and being a perfectionist, because you've lost touch with what's actually really important, what you need out of life. So when it comes to healing burnout or fixing that, it's just the process of closing that gap. It's just the process of reconnecting to yourself. So sometimes that looks at as simple as like, when I need a break, I take a break. When I when I need to have a rest, I take a rest. Like I listen to my body, I listen to those cues, right? I'm simplifying it a lot, but that is really the basis of it. And then it's as you do that continuously over time, you learn to trust yourself again. You learn to feel more confident in yourself. And then you start to understand what you really need to perform at a high level, right? Because so the people I work with are high performers, they're high achievers. Their workload is higher than most people. They're not there to feel more ambitious. They're there to understand how to be able to sustain that long term, right? Because you can skip the lunches, you can not sleep, you can do all that. And most of us do that in our 20s. I know you're quite young still, but most of us do that in their 20s because you kind of got to prove something still, right? And I don't think there's actually anything wrong with that. I don't regret that I did it. But once you get into your 30s, you realize that what got you to point A isn't going to get you to point B. And you start to prioritize things a little differently because now you've been maybe 10 years in the game. You don't have to quote unquote prove yourself as much. And the motivations become different. Now you are thinking more like sustainable long term. Now you are more thinking about like, but I also maybe want to start a family or take care of my health or whatever the case is. And you realize that that method of just putting your head down and pushing through isn't enough. And so you have to start to adapt. But the way you heal it on a basic level is you got to come back to yourself. You got to learn how to regulate your nervous system, which means train your body how to process and release stress efficiently. You have to learn how to be comfortable being still in the moment. You have to learn how to be comfortable connecting. Like all these things, they sound like we should know how to do them automatically. But with the world that we live in right now, we're constantly being distracted. It's actually kind of a lost art. And a lot of us have to be taught how to do it again.
Ah, you have mentioned so many things that I personally myself go through, and that's why I asked you the question, did you love what you did? Because what I do right now, I absolutely love it. I
Mm.
have jobs, I'm doing podcasting on the side, and I absolutely love it. My whole week is like fully packed. But when you mention about the tension in your shoulders, when you mention about skipping your lunches and doing work instead, this is me. This is what I do.
Well, and here's the thing, it's great that you love your job and you love what you're doing. That is so key. That what you can take from what I'm telling you today is how, if you can incorporate this stuff, it's going to allow you to do it long term. Right.
Hmm.
And so what happens is like you can skip the lunch, you can do all those things, but eventually you're going to get to a point where it's going to show up in ways you're like, oh, like that doesn't work anymore. Cause I always relate it back to children. I don't know if you have children or not, but like I have like a niece and nephew. Okay. And I think about like, if I told my niece every day she has to skip her lunch, like, how would that play out? Do you know what I mean? She'd be a very unhappy, angry child. And it also, it's kind of like borderline abusive. Like, I'm not going to feed her lunch when she's hungry. Do you know what I mean? She's telling me she needs to eat and I'm going to say no. That's essentially what we do to ourselves on a subconscious level. So again, when you're in your 20s and you're pushing through, like, I totally get it. I did all the same things. But if you want longevity and if you want to love your career long term and not eventually resent it, you want to make sure that it's not coming at the sacrifice of your needs.
Hmm. Very interesting. I think many people tie the worth or tie their self worth to how productive they are. Do you think redefining the relationship with stress and productivity can help them avoid falling into the burnout cycle?
Absolutely. And it's a really great point you brought up because, especially for the people that I work, pretty much everyone does. Everyone attaches their worth to how productive they can be. And it's not a fault of their own. That's typically just a byproduct of growing up in a household where your productivity was what kind of got you that pat on the back or that love and affection from your parents. You know what I mean? Like, I have great parents. They loved me dearly and would do anything for me, but no doubt the praise was my grades and how hard I worked and all those things. So when you learn that as a kid, you automatically carry that forward into being an adult, right? So then you look at how that your worth in the world is based on how productive you are. Now, I'm not going to say there's not merit to that because, of course, like, if you're going to hire someone to do a job for you, It's good if they know what they're doing and if they've proven themselves and if they have some experience. Always new people are good too, but you know what I'm saying? That's always going to have more weight as far as like your worth. You can probably charge more if you're more experienced, if you have better reviews, right? But when we're talking about worth related to productivity, it goes beneath that, and understanding that my belief is that every human being is worthy from just a basic human level, because we are one of one. There is no one else who looks like you, who was born when you were, who's had the same life experiences as you, right? And the same with me. And that alone makes you worthy of love and connection and happiness and all these basic human things, right? So then where it gets mixed up for people is when we're productive, we typically get what? We typically get recognition in some way, right? Whether that's a bigger paycheck or a pat on the back from our boss or promotion, right? We get some type of quote unquote reward for being productive. But then what we do is we tie that reward to meaning that I'm a good human being because I got that reward, right? And that's the relationship I work on with people, knowing that like I still want you to be productive. I still want you to have great work ethic and do all those things, but I also want you to know that just because you took the day off doesn't mean you're any less worthy of the things that you want in life, right? And it's one thing to say that, and you're nodding right now and you're like, yeah, that makes sense, but it's another thing to have your behavior reflect that as well too, right? And I'm still constantly on a path of it. Like I just told the story a little while ago. My boyfriend was like, let's take a road trip for the weekend, right? We have this camper van. We're going to go to the mountains. And my first thought was, have I done enough work to take a couple days off? Right? That's it right there. That's an example of it right there. And then I had to stop. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, he wants to go take me to the mountains for a weekend. Like, I shouldn't have to earn joy. I shouldn't have to earn happiness. Like, yeah, I can go to the mountains and I can come back and my work's still going to be there. Like, it's not going anywhere, but it's having recognition in those moments of where we're still weighing out whether we are worthy of being able to actually enjoy our life or not.
Wow, it is so interesting, all these points that you mentioned. Somewhere down the line, I think everybody is aware of these. It's just so it's imbibed so subconsciously that
Mhm.
we tend to ignore them.
Mhm.
Just like you mentioned about skipping your lunches, like subconsciously, I'm getting that intuition, I'm getting that little nudge that I'm hungry and I should have my meal, but I would ignore it because I have something to work on. Do you think ignoring these intuitions or little nudges that sometimes tell us to slow down or sometimes tell us to change the direction, this is in part responsible for the burnout?
100%, because so on a basic level, there's the fact that like, hey, you need food to live. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, so there's on a basic level, that's fuel, that's just like putting gas in your gas tank. So there's a benefit of eating. So there's that part of it. But then the other way that adds to burnout is like every time your body tells you you're hungry. And now I'm not talking about from an indulgent standpoint, right? Like if you're just like eating to like binge eat, that's different. But if we're talking about you have normal eating habits, you're in the middle of your busy workday and your body's saying, hey, I need some fuel. When you ignore that, you're essentially reinforcing within your system that your needs aren't important. That's what you're telling yourself. Just like if I was to say no to my niece for her to have lunch, she's going to say, "Well, auntie doesn't actually care about my needs." What actually happens, you start to lose trust in yourself, because like she would say, she's like, "Well, she's not going to feed me, so why do I even keep asking?" Right? And that can happen for ourselves on a subconscious level. So then when you do that over and over and over again, the body starts to think that, well, A, you're not going to give me any fuel to replenish myself. So that leads to the burnout. But then B, it's like, well, our needs are important. So then we're just going to keep grinding and wasting all this time and all this energy doing these other things, because who cares if we feel better? We're just trying to survive. And
Hmm.
when you do that on a long enough time horizon, eventually that ends up being burnout.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you think mindful practices or reflective practices are effective in overcoming burnout?
Yeah. Do you mean things like meditation or like what, or just like reflection period or?
Meditation, journaling, all these
Yeah.
practices.
So definitely they're helpful because again, the first step is always awareness, right? So you can't fix a problem that you aren't aware of. So reflection and meditation, if you can do it, or journaling is a great exercise, are always super helpful. So no doubt about it, but they're only one piece of the puzzle,
Hmm.
right? If you're journaling and journaling and journaling, great, but then there has to be some change in behavior. And typically that is, it's not that you can't, but that's the slower way of getting there. I always talk about mindset work versus nervous system work. Okay. And so mindset is obviously what we know, right? Your thought processes, your awareness, the journaling, the reflection. And then there's nervous system work. And nervous system work, for simple terms, is essentially how your body processes what's happening. Okay. Most of us don't separate the two, they kind of think it's all together. But um, to give you an example of this, it's like, let's say I have a coworker that um, makes a lot of mistakes. And if they make a lot of mistakes, I have to cover for them. Okay. So when they make a mistake, my mind is going to go, oh, they made another mistake. This is more work for me. I need to go fix it. I need to go handle it. But then my body might respond by having a tight chest, having a pit in my stomach, my shoulders getting crunched up, right? And what that response is telling me is, oh no, I have to go take care of something that might end up being broken or whatever the case is. But there's two responses. There's the mindset and the body. And that happens for everything. It's just most of us aren't aware. So when it comes to healing burnout and you ask about these reflection practices, the mindset is only 20% of the machine. The body is 80%. So when it comes up to switching our state, like if we're sad and we want to be more happy, or if we're feeling angry and we just want to feel more calm again, most people think they got to think their way out of it, or reflect their way out of it, or journal their way out of it. Okay. But when you do it that way, you only have 20% of the power. Where if you get your body involved, which means going for a walk, going to the gym, stretching, even just acting out something different, that's 80% of the impact. Okay. So this is only part of the equation. If you want real change, if you want to really heal your burnout, you have to get the body involved as well too. And that's the piece that 99% of the information out there misses. Everyone just focuses on mindset. But I always say mindset sees the opportunity. The nervous system determines whether you can capitalize on it or not.
Wow, that's an incredible point because I always thought that the relation between body and mind is like chicken and egg, like which comes first.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the times, or at least I was not able to figure out like, do I fix my mental health first or do I fix my physical health first?
Mm-hmm.
I always thought like which one to go with first, but then you said it's 20 and 80, it's not 50-50, or it's not, it's definitely codependent, but it's
Of
body
course.
first.
Of course, the body just has more impact. Like even if you just look at the size of you, right? Your head is so much smaller than the rest of your body, right? They do work together, right? To make a feel full human. But yeah, you want to work through your body. And so that can be through working out through diet, but that's also in how your body releases stress out of the body. How do we get the shoulders to come down? How do we breathe deeper? How do we feel safe trying something new, right? Like it's not even just that stuff, but it's like, like if you want to grow in life, you have to experience something new, right? So maybe it's s- doing this podcast would have been something new for you, probably more nerve wracking at first, probably got a little bit easier the more you did it, right? But it was the act of doing it. You can't just think, I'm going to get better at this podcast. You have to do, and it's in order to really integrate and get better at the podcast, right? So they absolutely are codependent. Both are needed, but people forget about the body part of it and the nervous system part of it.
Wow, very thoughtful actually. Never thought about it this way.
Mm.
If someone is listening to this podcast is feeling exhausted and unmotivated in general, what's the very first small step that they should take towards recovery?
That's a good question. Um, and because there can be many different reasons as to why someone is feeling unmotivated and exhausted, right? There's a few different things. Um, but if I was to give you the most basic first step that anyone could take, it's you need to regulate your nervous system. Okay. And essentially what that means is when people are exhausted and feeling unmotivated, it's usually that just means they feel stuck. So they might consciously know, oh, I got to get up and do this, or I have a big to do list, or I want to start something new. That's the majority of people. But then the not feeling motivated, as you said, or the feeling exhaustion is the body going, but I don't have the capacity to do that. Right? Like how often have you thought like, oh, I know I need to do this, but then you're just stuck on the couch or you just do your same dance all day and scroll Instagram or whatever the case is, right? So so what I always say, rule of thumb, is you need to get out of your head and into your body. So don't think about how you need to get these things done. Just go do something. And it could be something off the list, or maybe it's something completely unrelated. Maybe you just need to go for a walk in nature. That's honestly my go-to always if you're feeling exhausted. Go for a walk where some trees, leave your phone at home
Yes.
and don't have a timeline. Go for an hour, go just walk, take a Saturday and just walk, right? Like I would just start there because 9 times out of 10 when you do that, you feel better, right? And if after one day you don't feel better, you go for another day and another day and another day till you come back into your body and you can find the energy and the fuel again to do whatever you need to, right? That would, I'd say, is the most basic thing. And I know people listening are probably like, that sounds so trivial, right? Like, oh, I just got to go walk in nature. Yes, that's honestly all you got to do, right? Like just get up and go for a walk. It doesn't have to be fast. Leave your phone at home. Ideally go by yourself, but if you want to go with a friend that you trust, then that's okay too. But you got to take a moment to reconnect with yourself. And most of our environments, again, we're inside with artificial light and our phones and screens and all these things. It's not supportive of um refueling yourself efficiently. So that would be just my number one thing. Do that and keep doing that till you feel like you got the energy again.
Love it. I really like the advice. I personally myself do that. Sometimes when I'm just not feeling being at home,
Mhm.
I just go out and walk in the nature. I actually learned about this a couple of years back, that nature is only thing that a human being has like a neutral perspective about. Like it is not positive or negative. Like most of, for example, like anything I might have a good or a bad perspective. Like probably for a coworker or probably for friends, like she's a good friend or she's not a good friend or person or anything. Like this is a good restaurant, this is not a good
Mm.
restaurant.
Mhm.
But we have like good and bad perspective about usually everything that we come across. But
Mhm.
nature is one thing that we are neutral about. Like we are just there, and that is
That's fascinating. Yeah, but it makes sense to me too. Do you mean like I would do say I do say I love nature, like I really do, but I get where you're coming from. Like it's almost just like this inner knowing with everybody of like just what it is. Do you know what I mean? And what power it holds. So like that's really cool.
yeah, and it's great way to reconnect with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
You talked about mindset. I want to go a step deeper to that. Do you think burnout usually comes from like just external pressures, or it is also shaped by our own mindset?
I think it stems from our own mindset, and the external pressures just amplify what we're usually thinking, right? Because like I always say, my bio says I'm a recovering control freak and perfectionist. Like that's the root cause of my burnout, is because whenever I do something, I am overperforming on everything, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm
Yeah.
a control freak and I'm a perfectionist, that usually means I overthink. That usually means I never delegate. I try and do everything myself so it gets done a certain way. That usually means that I am hyper fixated on making sure there's no mistakes, no errors. I double check everything. That usually means I'm over preparing. I could have a presentation next week and I know exactly what I'm doing and I will still over prepare for it, right? So it's that stuff. It's like having 20 tabs open all the time, right? And something that only needs 10% of your energy now is taking up 60 or 70% of your energy, right? That's my own doing, and I always use an example of like my last career where I worked, because I obviously don't have a boss now, I'm my own boss, but I remember I had this partner and him and I were interchangeable. So when I was there, he was there. When he was there, I wasn't there. Like, so when my shift is done for the day, he takes over. And I remember having these clients that were coming in after my shift, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to stay and help them. Even though I had a perfectly capable partner who was there who could have done it, I just wanted to do it my way. Right. So then my boss pops his head into the office and he goes, why are you staying late? Like, he can take care of it. And I was like, oh, no, I just want to make sure it's done right. And da-da. He's like, oh, okay, well, okay, Minh-Thu, right? Have a good night. And when I look back on that, I probably before would have been like, well, they expected me to work late. And when I really look up back on it, I'm like, well, no, it was me, right? It was my perfectionism that was wanting me to stay late to make sure it was done. Did they appreciate it? I'm sure they did, because they could tell I was loyal and I was a team player and I was thinking for the best of the business. But that was me who chose to stay late because I couldn't give up the control of executing something a certain way. Right. And I think that's the case for most high achieving people is they just know the way they want it done. And so they'd rather hold on to the power of doing it. But then what that does is that burns you out. And then what also happens is then you now reinforce behavior with people around you that they start to expect this behavior out of you because you're the one who did it. So
Mm,
did he expect it out of me before? No, but now that I've done it, guess what? They're not going to be afraid to ask for it again and again,
yeah.
right? So it's
Wow.
our own doing, but it gets amplified because now people see how we do it and they expect that from us, but it's because of us.
Interesting. Quick follow up question. Then, how were you able to shift your mindset from being a perfectionist to being a functioning professional?
Well, first, it's still a work in progress. Okay, so I'm not perfect at not being a perfectionist. I mean, it's still a work in progress, but honestly, like the shift in that space is going to be when you start to really understand your worth, right?
Hmm.
And you understand that whether you put out a picture perfect piece of work or not, it doesn't affect your worth, right? Like something as simple as like I was talking to a client about this, about like an email. Like I used to proofread emails 10 times over, no spelling mistakes, periods, capitals, all that. Does it sound cohesive? And I'd proofread that over and over, right? Once I started to like know that I was really good at my job, it didn't matter as much anymore, right? Because it's like, but, who cares if there's a spelling mistake? They know what I mean. Or who cares if I didn't capitalize it? They know what I mean, right? It's like because I knew my worth, not just only was I good at what I did, but I knew that like even if I had a spelling error, it didn't make me any less capable or competent or worthy. It's like, oh, okay, so then now I'm not wasting all this energy trying to appear perfect when A, we all know perfect isn't real, first of all. And B, perfectionism is just a defense mechanism. Like
Hmm.
all perfectionism is doing is it's a defense mechanism so people can't see the real you. You're trying to prevent people from seeing any of your flaws or any of your vulnerabilities. So you try to show up as perfect as possible in hopes that they won't see it.
Hmm.
Well, I spelt the word wrong. And if you think that makes me any less good at my job because of it, then that's on you because I know I'm still damn good at my job. You know what I mean? But it's not an excuse to not put out good work, but
Hmm.
it just makes you more mindful of when you are overdoing it essentially, you know?
Hmm. Very interesting. And the other thing that I was talking about is how did you change or shift your mindset from trying to do everything to setting boundaries?
Also a very good question. Um, Again, so that's a work in progress, right? I think there's always more to do in that area and it's not something that happened overnight, but like when it comes to setting boundaries, as you start to come back to yourself and regulate your nervous system, and then like again take care of yourself the way you should be taken care of, you start to realize that like you're a human and you only have so much bandwidth, and you're not getting an award for taking on more than you should. Like no, like you don't get a reward for saying yes to everything. Do you know what I mean? And also, when I look around at the most successful people in the world, whether that be in business or with their families or health wise, the people who are the best at saying no usually are the most successful. Okay. So if we're talking about someone who wants to be really physically fit, what are they good at saying no at to? No to processed foods, no to sugar, no to binge eating, no to being, you know what I mean, lazy or not working out. Like they are very good at what they're saying no to. When we're talking about the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, he's very good at saying no to anything that's not in alignment with what his business is doing, right? No, 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 right? And so when I thought about the most successful people or the best at saying no to things, I thought, okay, well then I need to adopt that strategy for me, because I'm not getting anywhere by saying yes to everything. I'm burning out. I'm not feeling happy. I'm not all these things. So what happens if I start saying no, right? And when it comes to boundaries, I'm glad you brought that up. Most of us have the understanding of boundaries wrong, meaning we think boundaries are about what other people will do, okay? When it actually has nothing to do with them and everything about us. So, for instance, my boundary is I am not going to answer emails past 6 p.m. That's my boundary, okay? And then my boss emails me at 6:30. And I go, he's not respecting my boundaries. I told him I wasn't going to answer this email, blah, 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 blah. Boundaries are about what you will do. So in this case, I said, I'm not responding to emails past 6 p.m. Doesn't matter what he did or didn't do. I'm not responding, right? But what we do is we try to make it about what the other person did or didn't do, when really it's about us upholding the boundary for ourselves. He can email me all night long. I'm not responding. That is my boundary, right? Where if I now get stuck and get mad at him because he's emailing me all night, well, now I've just given away my power. Now I've just wasted so much time, energy, mentally, emotionally, physically worrying about someone else that I can't control. Right. So those perspectives really helped me. And then, if you're someone who struggles to set boundaries, my advice is always just start small. Don't start with the big ones. Don't start in the areas where you're like, oh, I know I need to set a boundary so bad here. That's going to be the hardest one for you. And you're probably not going to do well with it. That's just reality. You
Yeah.
start small.
Yeah.
So again, if the same example is I'm not going to work past 6 p.m., then maybe the first basic boundary is I'm just not going to work through my lunch,
Hmm.
right? Right? We don't start with I'm a hard stop at 6 p.m. We go, I'm not going to work for 30 minutes at lunch. And you just start basic there, right? And you get used to that. Okay, I stick to, I'm not going to work for an hour at lunch. Okay, stick to that. Okay, now maybe I can try not working past 6 p.m. Like you have to baby step it, right? So that again, back to what I said earlier about the mindset, you might know you need to set boundaries, but your body might not feel safe doing that. So when
Hmm.
you start baby step, the body goes, oh, okay, that wasn't so bad. And then you try to, oh, that wasn't so bad. That wasn't so bad. And then you get better at doing it and it feels easier in the system.
Hmm. Yeah, and then body takes time to adapt as well, so it'll be easier for body to adapt baby steps as opposed
Yeah,
to bring a big change.
exactly. And what that looks like translating it to everyday terms is you feel less guilty.
Hmm.
You feel less judgment or criticism. You feel less like you're going to miss out on something. That's showing that the body's adapting to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also like the point when you mentioned like these are small nuances that we miss out on. That, for example, if I'm doing lunch or not doing lunch, it doesn't really matter to my bosses. But then it's just in my head that, oh, if I'm not doing my lunch, I would probably get rewarded. I mean, I never thought it in that way, but probably that's going on subconsciously. And it's, even if I start doing lunch, it's not gonna be a big deal for my boss. Or if I skip my
Honest,
lunch, it's gonna be a big deal for them.
Exactly, exactly. Like to them, it's interchangeable, but to you and what it's doing to your psyche and your physical body, nutrition wise, long term, it's gonna hurt you more than it's gonna. They won't even notice.
Yeah, yeah. Very, very interesting. And it's like, for me, it's eye opening and just getting into details of what actually is going on when you
Mm,
make small decisions and just ignore it.
hmm. And it happens to all of us. You know what I mean? Like we all have a certain type of programming we run, so it's just becoming more aware of it.
Yeah. A question related to what we discussed. Like, I am an immigrant, so I'm asking you this question from an immigrant lens.
Hmm.
I think the immigrant mindset, which usually is backed by a sense of resilience and sacrifice, which I think often is a strength, but however, I think it sometimes make it harder to recognize when one is burning out.
That's what you're asking. Is it harder because of that mentality?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so because, obviously my parents are immigrants too. And like when you think about the energy of immigration, it's based in survival, right? Like my parents came here with the clothes on their back and they had to figure it out. It's based in survival, right? Understandably so. So then when you think about purely survival, we translate that into how we're living today, right? Where yes, we all have to survive to a basic understanding, right? But like I don't have to deal with the same level of survival as my parents did. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like they literally had no family, no friends, didn't know the language, had the clothes on their back, came from a hot country to a country with winter, like all these things. I was born here, right? So my level of survival is different now, right? Like I don't have to survive to the same degree. Now I don't know your story exactly, but like I think there's a lot of benefit in having that mentality because we are resilient.
Hmm.
However, I do think like can you burn out that way? Obviously yes, but to your question of like making it harder to identify that you're burning out, this is where the awareness of saying like I'm not saying I don't have to work hard, but I'm saying I don't want to sacrifice my well-being in the process of working hard, right?
Hmm.
So going back to your exact example, you working through lunch, okay? Whether you eat lunch or you work through it, I'm going to guess you're probably going to get the same amount of work done. Honestly, right? Because once you eat lunch, guess what? You usually have a little bit more energy. You can refocus again because your brain got a little bit of a break. And what would have taken you maybe an hour, maybe is now only going to take you 30 minutes to get done.
Hmm.
Right. So the choice to skip the lunch, it's like there's the resilience of working through it. But then there's also understanding that like just because I eat for 30 minutes doesn't mean I'm still not going to get it done.
Hmm.
Right? And it's understanding those sacrifices we're making within ourselves. Are some sacrifices going to have to be made to get somewhere in life? There always is. There's always trade offs, right? But it's about realizing what trade offs are actually worth it to you and the type of life that you want to live.
Interesting. Very insightful, actually. We talked about this earlier, but in your experience, do you think simply acknowledging burnout is one of the hardest parts for professionals, given there is always a pressure to appear strong and in control?
Yeah, you just nailed it. No one wants to admit it because it's like, I can't, there's no way I'm burnt out because that means I can't handle it, or that means I'm weak, or that means I'm broken. You mean, of course, like no one wants to admit it, but like, I tell people all the time that burnout was the best thing that ever happened to me because I did something about it, right? Because I did something about it, it completely changed my life. It changed how productive I am. It changed how I replenish myself. It changed how I value my relationships. Like, and I'm not any less productive. I healed my burnout and then quit my 9-year career and started a whole new business. Do you mean? So I didn't lose any ambition in the process, but it changed my life for the better because I'm just way more purposeful and intentional and happy in the process. There's still hard days. There's still some days that I'm crying. That still all happens, but it's not to the degree where I'm just living in this constant state of like numbness. You know what I mean? So it is hard to admit, but only if you think that means defeat. And burnout is the best thing that ever happened to me, and all my clients who come and work with me, they come out on the other side better leaders, better parents, better spouses, better friends, because they have way better tools on how to navigate the busyness of their life.
Yeah, very powerful. Finally, tell us about your higher alignment program.
Yeah, I'd love to. Um, so I work with executives and high achievers, pretty much anyone who's in a leadership type position, and help them learn how to rewire their relationship with stress and burnout. And so what that looks like on a basic level is every person has a strategy for or system for how they process stress, right? So just like even in your line of work, as an engineer, I'm sure there are systems that you follow to make sure jobs get done a certain way, right? And the more efficient that system, the better the job gets executed, right? The more trust you have that it's going to get done properly, right? It's the same way with how we process stress in our bodies. So you have a system, I have a system. Now, if we're experiencing some of those symptoms, like I mentioned earlier, doom scrolling, overthinking, tight chest, tight shoulders, bad sleep, poor digestion, having a short fuse. When you start to see those symptoms, that's pretty much just your indicator that your system needs an upgrade. Okay.
Hmm.
It's not working as efficiently as it once was, and we need to upgrade it. Okay. So that's the work I do with people. I look at what's the current system that we're running and how do we upgrade that in a way where you feel better, your relationships are better, you're feeling more happy, more joyful, more purposeful, and you can still be ambitious. Right. And it's done in very minor incremental shifts that are very impactful, but get to the root cause. So I'm not just giving you some like basic high level, like fix your calendar, go meditate. It's not just surface level stuff. It's tools that you can take with you. So no matter whether you're working with me or not, you know how to get your body back on track when you're dealing with stress, because we can't eliminate stress altogether, right? That's impossible. We don't want that. Stress is what makes you grow. But when you have the right skill set to know how to minimize the degree to which that stress affects you, it just makes you more powerful, more productive, more abundant, everything all around. So I work one on one with people in developing that for themselves, and it can happen in less than 90 days. Like it can happen very very quickly. So um, that's in a nutshell how I help people.
Love it. And what an incredible, powerful discussion. Thank you, Min, for joining me today. Promise me we are going to do a part two of this.
Yeah, that'd be great.
To all the listeners, I'd like to reiterate that burnout is not a badge of honor, it is a warning sign. And as we heard today, true leadership is about leading with clarity, purpose, and balance. A huge thank you to you again for sharing such practical wisdom and heartfelt insights. If the episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who need to hear it. Min, do you have any final words for our listeners?
I would just say that when your body is giving you these warning signs, pay attention to them, right? Like pay attention to them. That's what our body was designed for. And if you have more questions or anything, the best places to reach me are LinkedIn, which is where Harjit found me. So you can find me on LinkedIn, just search up my name, or Instagram. You can find me on there as well too. And I'm constantly having conversations with people about this because I just want people to suffer less. Like you don't have to be stuck in this constant cycle of overwhelm and anxiety. I promise you there's a better way, and it's not that hard to accomplish it. All you got to do is you just got to be willing to take the first step.
Very interesting. Until next time, remember success without fulfillment is not success at all. Thank you for joining again and see you next time.